No, your eyes do not deceive you. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are back for another animation analysis video. Hello, everybody. Dokkan Assets here. Man, it has been a fat minute since I've said that, huh? Hello, everybody. Yes, obviously, I know this is probably a surprise considering I'm assuming most of you saw my video and or my current pinned tweet on the Dokkan Assets account talking about how I am basically just going to be, stepping away from the channel and content and stuff like that to, kind of give myself a break and, kind of, do some other things and move on with different projects and different things that I'm doing in life. But your boy had a little bit of free time, and I really wanted to talk about the animations that this guy has, because I have been seeing people slandering this man on Twitter. People have been saying his animations are mid, and I cannot be having that. So I'm coming here to show y'all what's up. Yes, we are back for just one video. Don't expect this to be a regular thing. I'm sorry. Listen. I don't want to burst your bubble, but I also don't want to give you false hope. So this is just going to be a one-off video, but I really wanted to take a look at BUUHAN. So that is exactly what we are going to do today. As well, funny enough, right before I was about to hit record for this video, the boy Jihad actually uploaded the comparison for BUUHAN to the anime. So we will also be taking a look at this after we are done with the video. And of course, I'll leave a link to his tweet in the description below, along with obviously a link to the full animation. So as per usual, let's go ahead and take a look at this one time through, and then we will dissect. So obviously we have the Grand Supreme Kai. We're really not going to talk much about this animation because it's something. It's there. It exists. But BUUHAN'S animations, man, oh my gosh. The fluid movement on the parts that have movement are absolutely insane. This is the equality that I expect from every single monthly Dokkan Fest bare minimum, right? This is awesome work, especially considering the anniversary is right around the corner in February, right? Absolutely insane. We will again be talking about the ups and downs of these animations here, because I know that there is some that's definitely a little bit like, they maybe could have done a couple of extra things here or there, but I think for the most part, right, this is amazing. And again, very much so, especially considering the fact that this character is coming out before the anniversary, and a lot of the time these characters end up getting shafted in the animation. This thing is so funny. End up getting shafted in the animation department because obviously they're coming out, right before the anniversary. So of course the efforts of the Dokkan team are focused on making the anniversary animations as good as possible. So, real quick, I'll give my thoughts on this guy, the Grand Supreme Kai, real quick, and then we will kind of just move on from him, because there's really not much that I want to say about him, and not to mention, I'm really not that interested in talking about him. I really just want to talk about BUUHAN, but since he's here, I guess we'll just, basically give him a mention. The parts that are kind of like the in-between things are fine, like this, right, with him kind of just looking. This entire sequence of him punching is awful. There's no way to sugarcoat it. It's terrible. It's worse than a lot of the free-to-play units from this year. It's worse than a lot of the animations from like 3 years ago. It's really not good. The entire punching sequence is very not great. There's basically no movement. It's essentially just two PNGs moving back and forth. The cape is a huge telling point of this, right? Maybe this would be a little bit better looking if there wasn't the cape, but the cape really holds it down because you can tell that the movement is just so lackluster, right? This is just a sliding PNG until the end with the punch, and they just kind of have him punch forward with the background. Now, I will say, basically from here on, this rest of the animation is okay, right? This isn't too bad, right? It looks fine. Like, this part looks like it could have just been from the anime with him moving his head back and then shooting the blast, right? Obviously, the blast itself doesn't look too bad with the funny, like, choo-choo, choo-choo-choo. I don't know how to describe those lines. But either way, though, like, this part of the animation is fine, right? I just don't think it's anything to write home about. And then, obviously, this is just a KO screen with, again, just an explosion in the distance. Like, nothing too wild, but, again, just very basic, whereas the part with the punches is just straight up bad. Supreme Kai, Grand Supreme Kai rather, section over. I ain't talking about this bum unit, okay? This guy could have been an unfeatured banner unit from like 3, 4, 5 years ago. He is mid. Actually, he's not even mid. I'd say he's just bad, to be honest with you. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at BUUHAN'S animation. So we start off with BUUHAN obviously scoring up against Vegito. By the way, obviously I know, definitely leave your thoughts in the comment section below what you think is going to be the part 2 LR for this, right? Are we going to get an LR Super Vegito? Are we going to get an LR Kid Buu, right? I know people are talking about, because we're getting an LR Anilaza from Battlefield, that we might end up getting a Tournament of Power LR, because that happened one time when they implemented a new Battlefield LR. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below for sure. But with the boys squaring up here, obviously the iconic scene from the Buu saga, right? I will say, sure, this part could maybe have had something, right? Rather than kind of just having them be there, right? And stanced up, and maybe BUUHAN could have done a little bit something else, but I don't think it's terrible, right? It's kind of just introducing you to the scene, and it's cool that they made reference to it at all, because realistically, they honestly could have just started this animation here, right? And then had the cut-in be there. So I kind of like that they had this little part here, because it makes it feel a little bit more like you're... It's almost kind of like when they cut back in after a commercial break in the anime and they're like reintroducing you into the scene. That's kind of the like feeling that it gives me, which is cool. Yeah, so all of the animation on BUUHAN here, perfect. The movement, perfect. The fluidity of how he moves, perfect. The movement of the ghosts, perfect. Like, there is nothing bad that I can say about this section of the animations here. It's so good, right? The little bits of movement where they're a little bit more snappy are perfect with how they should be, and there's so little of it that it's really hard to see. It's honestly just so fluid. It looks amazing, right? Like, when I saw this, I thought I was dreaming, bro. I thought I was misseeing things, because this fluidity on Dokkan animations is something that's so rare. And I swear, we really don't see it that often, especially, you know, with just a random monthly Dokkan Fest. Like, this is insane work, okay? I don't know how anybody could be calling this mid. So then, we obviously get all of the ghosts out, and then it's interesting, right? Because they kind of cut the ghosts. I don't know if they take shape. Again, we'll take a look at the anime comparison in a second, but it's kind of interesting that they cut from them just being clouds to then going to here, where we obviously have the ghosts coming into frame from the side. I think that's fine, right? Again, like, this feels like the type of thing where it was kind of a corner cut, right? But at the same time, this almost feels like something where the animation right before it was so good, and because, again, a lot of the time you also have to keep in mind when these units come out, right, in terms of like what's coming next for Dokkan. Again, keeping in mind that the anniversary is in February, so typically these units animations sometimes, right, suffer because of it. That kind of feels like something that was a reason why they did it, because, you know, it's a way for them to save some time and money on that. But either way, the movement of the ghosts is fantastic. Each individual ghost's movement is so nice. The nice little movement on the head tentacle as well, perfect. Like, it's so good for introducing them into the scene. It looks amazing. They look like fantastically modeled as well, right? So good. And I like too that, you know, even though obviously, you know, stinky sprites will be stinky sprites, I like that they kind of use this as a way to frame the enemy like this, right? Where obviously they have the enemy basically just like kind of surrounded by the ghosts, sort of. This will look a little goofy probably with giant sprites, but it looks pretty cool in the way that they frame the shot with a regular sprite, right? So then we have this shot of all the ghosts. This looks really, really good too. I quite like this a lot. Right, we have the ghosts right in front of BUUHAN, and BUUHAN's movement right here, I understand that the ghosts really don't do much, but if I'm recalling correctly, again, we'll take a look at it when we look at the comparison here, but if I recall correctly, the ghosts are kind of just chilling there while BUUHAN is, you know, doing his thing in the back. And very interesting, right? That entire time for all that animation, finally, the cut-in happens, right? Usually in most Dokkan essays, the cut-in and the text happens a lot sooner than that. So I think it's really interesting for this animation. They really show off their stuff with the fluid animation for getting the ghosts to form before they kind of have them be like, boom, here they are, right? Very cool. Focus on the movement on BUUHAN in the back. So fluid, bro. Like, again, I don't think that there's a single thing I can complain about how it looks. The movement is super fluid. Each movement of the hand, the head, his expression, right? All of it is on point. Like, there's really nothing for me to critique here in terms of like anything that looks kind of wonky or whatever, right? Like, every movement is perfect. Even Buuhan, like the one part that is a little bit like snappy is the perfect amount of snappy, right? Let me see if I can get it on the frame by frame here, right? When Buuhan's kind of having his head down and then bam, he lifts it up, right? Super perfect moment to do this because obviously it kind of makes it a little bit more climactic, like there he is. Now you can see his expression, and obviously it's him lifting his head up super quickly, so obviously animating it like this is a perfect way to do it to kind of emphasize that movement and make it more exaggerated. Very, very cool. But yeah, so then obviously we have Buuhan send out the ghosts, right? After doing a lot of, he dabbed. I didn't even notice that. This art is also really cool. I quite like this art a lot, I will admit. But yeah, so then after this, right, we have a nice close-up shot of him where he tosses his arm forward, right, and commands them to move. Perfect. Like, the movement here, again, it's just so fluid. It's so well animated. Like, I'm looking at this and I'm like, dude, this is not a monthly Dokkan Fest. Like, there's no way that this is just some random monthly Dokkan Fest. Like, this animation is so good. It's too good to be a monthly Dokkan Fest, but that's what it is. So then we cut to the ghosts fast approaching the screen. And even these, right, despite seeming kind of just like moving PNGs, they have a little bit more movement to them than that, right? I like the way that they kind of spread out to sort of take up the entire space there. I think that's really cool, right? Obviously with the one ghost in the front opening his mouth quite a bit more, right? And it's pretty cool because they all kind of have a little bit of personality to them, even if they are all making a similar expression, right? With just obviously not having it be the same head copy pasted, right? They're all drawn a little bit differently, which is cool. And I like this very big exaggeration of the ghost head coming towards you, which is cool because then when they cut to them kind of like eating the camera, right? And you sort of going into the mouth, it alludes to what happens later, right, in the actual animations, because obviously Buuhan eats the person. So I really like that as kind of like a call forward, I guess, right, because it's not a call back. But it's really cool, right? Obviously a very nice camera angle, and it's cool because, you know, since this is a ghost, it's almost like you're going right through his mouth, which is pretty cool. But yeah, so then obviously you have them fly in, right? Again, the movement on them looks really nice with how they kind of stretch out towards the enemy, right? They zoom in and then have an explosion effect there. Now, I will say, this is probably the one part of this entire essay that I don't like. Don't get me wrong, the explosion effect, perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with it. You know, the smoke looks good. The little bits of yellow kind of pouring out of the smoke look really good. There's even a couple little, like, white circles that kind of pop out there, right? Very, very cool, right? I like this essay quite a bit. Or this section of the essay, rather, quite a bit. However, what is bro doing? What is dude doing? There's no movement on this section, which is kind of a little bit unfortunate, right? They sort of just have the screen shake and Buuhan look at it. Now, this will be a pretty cool KO screen, right? Because this will end up being the KO screen where it just kind of ends on the explosion being there and then Buuhan standing there. But it kind of feels a little bit stale considering how amazing the animation was up until this point with all of the fluid movement and, you know, the amazing, like, just animation on everything, right? It kind of feels a little bit lackluster to sort of just end it on this like PNG of Buuhan looking at the explosion, but it's certainly not the worst thing that I've ever seen them done. This is so much better than Gohan Beast's KO screen where it's literally just a PNG. I cry every time. But anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at the comparison between the two. Almost forgot what it was called. Yeah, so look at this, dude. Like, spot on, if I do say so myself. Also kind of interesting. Okay, so for that shot there, right, they combined Buuhan's movement of this close-up shot, and then obviously they referenced this one here with the ghost kind of in front of him, right? I think that's pretty cool to kind of combine those two and then be able to use them in a way that makes it a little bit more unique. That's cool. Dude, like, basically one for one, man. Yeah, so I guess that's probably why that looks a little bit silly at the end there, right? Because the explosion is there and Buuhan's not there, right? And they took a little bit of reference of this shot here where Buuhan's kind of standing there. You can see the way that his arms are and the way that his legs are look very similar. It's probably not exactly, but I'd imagine they probably use this as a reference. But that's also why this probably looks a little bit strange, right? Because it is almost just like somebody added Buuhan into the scene, basically. And it's funny, right? I swear with Dokkan essays, they either like cook out of their minds with stuff that they add in that's like not necessarily in the anime or taken frame for frame from the anime, or they fumble the bag immensely. And I feel like that's what happened here. Like this entire animation where they just reference the anime material, perfect. And the anime references are spot on, right? It's basically like Dokkanifying this old Z look while still giving it that Z art style, right? It looks really good. No complaints from me. I'd say it's basically 1-to-1, except for the end here, right? Then because they have to add something that wasn't there, they're like, oh, and they can't get it down pat. I don't know. It's so weird. Anyhow, let's go ahead and take a look at the transformation now. So this, by the way, is a active skill that activates the domain, which is when you go inside Buu. This is a very funny looking PNG, right? Because obviously it's kind of supposed to be like Buu is, you know, forming out of the ground, right? That's kind of the point of this. Because then the card art for the essay like this is obviously him quite literally coming out of the goo. So that's why it looks a little bit weird in the domain kind of cut in here. But I swear this is the most of a character's body that we've seen in a domain. I could definitely be wrong about that. But this kind of feels different to me with like the way that it looks in comparison to the domain background. I don't know. But anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at that transformation animation. So we first have, oh, I get to say this line again. Are you ready, boys? Hydrate or dihydrate, baby. You already know. Don't forget to be drinking water. Listen, you can still get dehydrated, even though it's so cold out. It's still a possibility. All right. So we have Buuhan squared up against, I mean, this will be whatever sprite it is, but Buuhan, Vegito in this case, right? Then obviously we have the goop come up from the background, right? Now, I will say, this shot up until the goo is zoomed in is maybe a little bit right? Like Buuhan himself looks fine. I think the problem is they just slide this PNG of the Buuhan, or the Buuhan of the Goohan. I like that. We're going to use that from now on. The Boo Goo, what did I say? The Goohan? I forgot my own joke. The Goohan, right? Obviously coming towards you. You can kind of see that like it's arms, I don't know, the two little like flaps on the side there, right? They kind of move a little bit up and down, so there is a small little bit of movement on it as it's kind of coming a little bit more into focus, right? And they have the anime like, whoa, look at that lines there to kind of emphasize it, but it's really weird to me that they have it just stay in this shape until they get it close up, right? Once they get it here and they kind of have it expand a little bit, right, and move slightly, then they have it change the shape, right, to kind of emphasize the boo goo here. It also looks like a giant tongue, and now it looks like an ear. This is really disgusting to look at. Regardless, it's so weird that they only like have it move there and not like have it play through this entire animation that they have here with like the goo moving around as it's moving towards the camera. Like, I'm pretty sure that these two assets are the same assets as what's here, and then they kind of reappear a couple times, right? So it's not like they can't use the size of those PNGs farther away because they just did. I don't know. Could they not just have had that same animation play as it was coming forward? Not really sure on that one. But then, of course, we have the goo expand a little bit. I will say, I feel like weird thing about this, right? And the weird thing about that last shot of Boo, I feel like that's also a contributing factor to why it looks so weird in the essay, is the lack of shading. And this kind of looks a little bit more like the art style of a Dokkan sprite. Now, it's certainly not a Dokkan sprite, right? But the way that when they kind of make more like HD versions of the sprites and then put them in the story mode, right? And have them in like, you know, story assets and like different like mini stories and stuff like that, right? The art style is kind of like this, right? And it's a lot less shaded. Now, this one isn't as much so. You can tell that it's a little bit more anime-esque. But if we take a look at the shading throughout here, right, at Buuhan himself, right? And again, I think that's maybe another reason why this looks so weird, because this art style, I feel like, is very similar to how Buuhan looks. Let's go back here, right? In terms of like the way that he's shaded and the line work and stuff like that. Kind of interesting. But yeah, then if we go here, like again, Maybe a little bit more thick lines, but the movement kind of helps it there, right? Even here, Boo looks very anime-esque, right? Even though he's so far away. If we take a look at this shot, right, obviously the shading is very much so that, like, classic Dragon Ball Z shading. So it's kind of interesting that they decided to go with that for this. As well, I feel like the pink goo also kind of doesn't look detailed enough. Like, I know it's pink goo, so I guess they can kind of just get away with whatever, but just kind of what I'm observing here, right? So then we have the goo surround the enemy sprite, and I gotta say, this is a pretty ingenious way to make this work, because I was kind of thinking, okay, when they capture the enemy, how the heck is this going to work, right? They zoom in, and then they cut to it kind of pouring over the screen with the enemy sprite stanced up under a wave of the goo. That's a great idea on how to basically make any sprite work with this. Very, very good idea. Very, very smart on Bandai's part. We love to see it. But yeah, so then obviously the pink covers the screen, and then of course it's an interesting transition here that they decided to go, right? So basically it kind of just like disappears with the sludge, which I think kind of works because it's like the sludge going inside the pink. But I like this transition, right, where the pink kind of just fades away and then comes towards Boo. It's almost kind of like it's getting farther away from the camera, or it's kind of like the residue of the pink goo is like slowly fading away from the camera. Then obviously it goes a little bit closer to Boo. I like that they still have it move the whole time. BUUHAN'S movement is a little bit silly here, I gotta be honest. Like, what is Blood doing? I don't know. It's a little bit choppy at 1.2. Like, it's not the worst I've ever seen, but it's certainly not fantastic. But then we have this shot of the goo going on to Boo, right? And then obviously it gets absorbed into him. I don't think that this looks too bad in terms of the way that it's actually animated with this whole sequence. But I think, again, the lack of detail on Boo, and again, this kind of looking like an upscaled sprite sort of art style, I feel like makes this section look a little bit weaker, in my opinion. But once we get here, right, this is where it picks up. This is where the budget went. Holy cow. So ripping the shirt off is really cool. Also, doesn't that not make any sense? Because the shirt is goo? Because he makes his clothes out of the pink goo? So how is he ripping it off? Unless I'm not remembering correctly, and like the shirts of the people who he absorbs are their actual clothes somehow. But they have their clothes in the Boo cocoon. I don't know. I'm not going to question it. Regardless, he rips the shirt off. The animation looks fantastic. The ripping itself looks great, right? I love the look of the tear and all of the pieces of fabric coming off, right? I think that that's really cool. Boo's expression is also fantastic here with this little like angry smirk. So good. I will say, I do kind of wish that there was a little bit more here where instead of them just doing the lines and him kind of like having the shirt to the side, I wish there was a shot of the shirt like falling away and then they cut to him smiling. Because I feel like that would have made a little bit more sense, because it feels a little bit weird cutting from him still having the shirt in his hand and the ripped parts being right next to him to then having him chuckle like this. I feel like that transition could have used a little bit more work for sure. But by all means, this shot is fantastic, right? With Boo laughing his head off here. This looks great. Now, funny thing, right? Obviously, this looks a little bit strange because this isn't exactly Super Boo, which is the Boo that you're used to seeing shirtless, and I guess Kid Boo technically too. But this is BUUHAN shirtless, which I think only happens in like, what, one episode, and I think there's an SDBH card of it. So that's why it looks a little bit off, because it's not the right like head shape, because Super Boo's head is a little bit different than BUUHAN'S head. But it is kind of funny seeing this in Dokkan, right? And also the interesting thing to note here is quite literally all they're doing to just make him laugh is basically lifting up his body a little bit, right? And kind of compressing it, right? It is definitely a little bit of a different asset, I think, because the lines actually expand like this, and so do the like holes on his chest. And obviously the face is a little bit of a different asset, but this whole section looks good. I will say the one thing that does kind of stink is, again, now this is what I was talking about with the call forward with the ghosts, you know, to them obviously eating the camera, with them Boo being there and eating the camera. I do wish that there was a better transition for him opening his mouth and him being so close to the camera, right? Like, I wish that if they were just going to do this cut where he opens his mouth then I wish that they would have him farther back and then they zoom in, because it's really weird that the sky doesn't move. I think that's what's so trippy about this animation, is that the sky asset doesn't move whatsoever. Like, that would be closer to you if Boo had gotten this close with how he looks here, right? But obviously then they just pop in the asset. So that's definitely something that they could have improved on, but yeah, I just wish that they had a better transition for that. However, once we actually get to the open mouth and then we go inside of it, I think this looks fine, right, with him eating it. And then you obviously go down his throat into the Boo zone, right? And this is pretty cool, actually, that they kind of let the, like, edge of his tongue there linger a little bit. So it really feels like you're going into Boo's stomach. And then they obviously have the look of inside Boo, right? One may be familiar with this if obviously you've seen the anime, or if you've played Breakers and you've gotten eaten by Boo, this should look quite familiar to you. But yeah, then that obviously activates Boo's domain, and you are inside of his stomach. So now we can skip to the actual animation for the transformed Boo. However, let's go ahead and take a look at the comparison, right? So let's see, how does this look coming up to him? Yeah, it's moving as it's flying behind Vegito, at least as far as I can tell, unless it's just kind of an optical illusion. I feel like they definitely could have done a better job on that, but then once they get to this part, I feel like it looks fine, right? Yeah, I see what they were going for here. That's pretty cool. Yeah, and then obviously the inside of Boo. So here's what's so interesting about this, right? So they reference it. Oh, okay, so I guess he does rip. I guess it is clothes. Huh. I just didn't really remember that. Yeah, so they transitioned from that shot to basically referencing almost one-to-one this manga panel, which is pretty cool. And obviously they're going for all these different shots here where he absorbs them. I think this looks so weird again because, once again, it's the lack of shading on the Dokkan version that makes this feel a little bit weirder. And I think for this shot, the reason why it feels so weird is because he's close up to the camera in the anime, right? Because they take it from here where he, you know, like is obviously lifting his arms up, or he's about to lift his arms up, right? Where he's kind of like squatted down. But then when he actually does lift his arms up, it's a lot of a closer shot to the camera. And then they transition to it here, right? Kind of interesting, the little bit of the differences that they have between the two. Yeah, I think it's definitely the shading that makes those couple of shots look a little bit weird. But yeah, very cool references to the manga. I kind of wonder if that's a reason why they had this just abrupt cut from him chuckling to the open mouth, because it was just manga panel to basically back to the anime, and they didn't know how to transition to it. I'm not really sure. Alright. Regardless, let's go ahead and get to the super attack animation here. We will go here. Yeah. Okay. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. So this looks really good, by the way. Just like, obviously it looks absolutely disgusting, right? But that's kind of the point, that it's supposed to look super gross. They definitely do a good job on that, I will tell you that right now. The ground of Boo looks really good, right? Boo himself looks fantastic, right? I think that everything here looks really good. And obviously you can tell that this is now Super Boo rather than BUUHAN shirtless. But yeah, him sinking in looks fantastic, right? I don't think I have any complaints about that whatsoever. It looks amazing, right? And we have Boo's head come in through the hole, right? Which also looks really, really good. I know they kind of fade in between the assets. And funny enough, that is usually a complaint of mine when it comes to you know, animations and stuff like that. But this is absolutely them more so doing this in the way that it's supposed to be, like climactic, rather than them cutting corners. If we watch this in normal speed, right, you can see that with him kind of like, right, and then kind of coming in, right, it's a lot more anime-esque in the way that it moves, right? And even, we'll just do the direct comparison here, right? When he goes in, that's how it looks in the anime with the way that it's fading. So again, if they have it fade in the anime, right, perfectly fine, because it's referencing the source material. And again, I think in this particular case, it makes it feel more climactic. And I'm kind of glad that they actually did it in the beginning, because funny enough here, it's not really how it is in the anime with it kind of fading a little bit between the assets, right? He kind of just sinks in. And it's harder to tell on the Dokkan version in the full-time speed, right? But if we go back to here, when we watch him sink in, you can see that it is a little bit, right, in terms of like how the goo works. But I think that that works for continuing into the next shot where they kind of have him, you know, do this little fade, which looks good, right? It makes it feel a little bit more climactic. So I think they cooked with this shot. Again, it's basically 1-to-1. Super funny, by the way. Definitely going to be memes of people editing Buu over Goku and Vegeta, or well, something over Goku and Vegeta rather, with Buu looking at it. But yeah, very nice shot. And then obviously we get the card art popping on the screen there. I like that they again made him kind of more purple for the card art, because obviously that's how he looks when he's inside Buu, because it's super dark in there, right? All of the goo here looks fantastic, right? I will say I'm gonna want to look, and I think we might actually do the direct comparison right now. Does this just fade away from him and then the arm appears? Let's go ahead and take a look after we get the funny smile one more time. Yeah, because the goo, again, basically like 1-to-1 with the way that it looks in the anime. Yeah, okay, I guess they do just kind of fade it in. All right, well then that's fine, as long as it's referencing the source material, right? And then we obviously have the punching. Now, I will say this part is definitely not like poorly animated in any way. I think it looks just fine in the way that it's animated. I think it's just kind of a little bit like lackluster, because it's quite literally just like, you know, Buu's fist appears, right? The fist comes down, right? I like the way that it bends and all of the veins on it too. I like that close-up shot of it coming to the camera. The fist hits, it throws them away, right? And then obviously you have the open palm blast them, right? None of the animation here is bad, right? All of the animation looks fine. And I really like the transition too of the way that they do the like light covering the screen there from the blast, right? And obviously the blast following Goku and Vegeta till it explodes against the wall, which all that looks just fine, right? I think it's just the fact that they chose this like over anything else, because maybe this is really where they cut corners, because this is a lot easier for them to animate with just, here comes a giant fist, Patrick, no! Like, you know, it's so simple, and I feel like, again, it's not animated poorly. It's just like there's not a lot going on to kind of keep your attention and keep it like, you know, as exciting. I mean, I think the part with Buu in the beginning is really where this animation shines. Let's go ahead and watch this little bit. And again, I mean, for what it is here, right? Again, like cutting these shots together, it looks great, right? I don't think I have any complaints, again, on the actual animation itself of this shot. I just think that maybe they could have done something else. What else they would have done, I'm not really sure, but I think that that might just kind of be the issue here. So, with all that being said, final thoughts on the boy Buu. Man, I gotta say, if people are still calling these men after this video, like, y'all need to get your eyes checked. Because there are so many worse animations that have come out this year than Buu. I would say Buu is up there with some of the better TURs, if not some of the best TURs from this year in terms of the animations, if I do say so myself. Oh my gosh, I'm looking at all the dirt in the background in the animation. You know, there are certainly parts about this that could easily be improved, right? And there are certainly things that they could have done better, and they could have, you know, maybe changed or tweaked a little bit. But overall, I think that the animations are really great. I think that the actual animation itself, right, in terms of the way that it's animated, right? Basically everything here is fantastic, if not almost perfect, right? I think the transformation animation might be the weakest in terms of the way that it's actually animated, right? Like the way that everything moves. I think everything else basically is just fine, right? If I do say so myself. Again, everything looks visually appealing. Like, there's really nothing in this animation that makes me go, ugh, which is definitely the case with other animations. That was the case with the punching sequence with Grand Supreme Kai. So, I definitely don't think that this guy is mid, right? I certainly don't think that he's bad. I think that he is really good. Would I say he's the best? Certainly not. Would I say he's peak? I don't know about all that, right? Peak has to be the best of the best. But good? Absolutely. Mid? Certainly not. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I apologize that this is not a comeback of the series or nothing like that. I just wanted to make this one-off video because I saw people talking about it and I was like, gotta throw my hat in the ring, gotta defend these animations, bro, because they look really good. They cooked with my boy BUUHAN. I'm pretty happy about this, I'm not gonna lie. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Dokkan, it's out. Peace.